we are very private, very discreet. And so, if you ask me to say what we do, and we'll get to it, I'll say a little bit, but I can't tell you a lot about what we do. And I think sometimes that can be a red flag when someone says, nice to meet you, I'm worth however many billions. Most people who are worth billions are trying to hide that. It's, vibe will get you most of the way.
Well, I like vibe will get you most of the way.
Yeah, vibe will get you most of the way.
How do you or other family offices go about accessing deal flow?
It's very difficult. I think leveraging other relationships with family offices who are known experts in certain fields might be the way to go. And then you save on the management fees as well.
Well, hello and welcome back to the AU podcast. I'm here with my colleague, collaboration friend, Lucy Sermon. How's it going, Lucy?
All good. Another podcast, another day. Super excited.
Another really interesting guest. Probably, we're in the early stages, but Sam is definitely one of the more interesting people in the space, isn't he?
Well, he's definitely also a great friend of yours. Good friend of mine.
Go back a long way. He goes back a long way. His stories before, his experience before family offices is as interesting as before, which we get into in depth on this. A spoiler alert, he spent time in the jungle with tribes in Papua New Guinea and was stranded by various governments and what have you. It's crazy.
Yep, now he's in the jungle of the family office world.
Now he's in the jungle of very, very good, very nice. So yeah, really interesting conversation with Sam. I think you're going to enjoy this. Here he is.
Hi Sam, it's great to have you with us today. Sam's with Ness Investment Advisors. First of all, it'd be great for you to just kick off, give us an introduction to yourself and kind of kick us off into how you started in the world of family offices.
Sure, yeah, no, great to be here with you guys. So going back, I was abroad for most of my 20s, working in the Pacific, worked in government. And then I came back to London. I was actually on that street over there, Berkeley Street, working at a firm called the Salamanca Group, which is a kind of investment bank-ish. And it was through that I started drifting into more kind of private clients work. I then went to Euromoney Institutional Investor as part of a joint venture between Zambato, which is one of Joe Lonsdale's companies, Joe Lonsdale being one of the PayPal lads. And there we really started building out big networks, and I started meeting a lot of investors from institutional investors and family offices. So everything from the sovereign wealth funds down to the single family offices and everything in between. The pension funds, the insurance companies, the endowments, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I was there for a couple of years. And then I ended up working for a German single family office based in Hamburg, German consumer tech entrepreneur. I was there for 5 years. For most of that time, I was the kind of London wing, the London outpost of that family office. Those guys, they built a lot of internet businesses. So the principal of Triventura founded a company called Casamundo, which was almost like the German Airbnb, and then went on to build a lot of other consumer internet businesses. But when I joined, we were doing a lot of stuff in deep tech, life sciences. We anchored a venture fund looking at longevity. So I was there for 5 years, and I, during that time, met a whole bunch of other families, built something called FOS on the side, which I'm sure we'll get into. Anyway, I then left, and I now work for a Middle Eastern family office. Very different flavor, risk appetite. We don't do really, we're a slither of venture, but it's much more real estate, private equity heavy. So it's a bit of a shift of gears for me, but it's great. Yeah, loving it.
Before we get into it, because we've been friends for
forever,
years, well over a decade.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've got a really interesting, I guess that the pre-Salamanca bit is really interesting, and probably not a traditional route into family offices, really. There's some big stories in there, which we've some adventures.
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
I think Indonesia was
nearby. Yeah, Papua New Guinea. Yeah,
those old stories. So how did you come from, I guess, kind of like that adventure background? Yeah, and maybe tell us a bit more about that, and then end up here, because that's fascinating.
Yeah, well, I didn't, as a child, want to get a job at a family office. It wasn't it wasn't like a childhood dream fulfilled at all. But I did want to have crazy adventures, and I managed to tick that box by, in my 20s, I was in, all over the place, really, but culminating in 2013, end up in Papua New Guinea for various reasons, and ended up living with a tribe up in the Eastern Highlands province for about 10 months.
Great stories.
Yeah, it was nuts. Yeah, I mean, I was isolated from the rest of the world. It was a Stone Age tribe. I mean, they hadn't It didn't even have the wheel, just to give you a sense of the kind of vibe we're talking about.
Okay, so how did that come about? There's loads to talk about, but how did that
There
come
is loads
about?
to talk about, yeah. There's a few things that I probably shouldn't mention much about, but I was working for the British government at the time, and a lot of it was a bit of an accident, really. I never really intended to end up in this region, but I did, for reasons that we'll probably get into offline. And then I ended up being kind of almost marooned there for a very long time. So yeah, I came out of that experience, when was this? End of 2013. And I'd done a lot of work at that period in kind of political risk, and I was doing a lot of monitoring of the region as a whole. And so there was an opening at this firm around the corner that was a bank that was filled with a lot of, I was going to say questionable characters. That's maybe unfair, but a lot of spooks and a lot of ex-military people. And so they were interested in me because I was doing, I in government, done a lot of political risk work. And so I basically shifted over to the private sector. And even at that point, which was 2014, I suppose, I'd never heard of a family office at this stage. This was still not part of the plan. You may have guessed there's never a plan with me, actually, which we're going to try and change that at some point. But I ended up at the Salamanca Group, and I was doing a lot of stuff with companies in the Pacific and Asia in general, and individuals as well. But there was this other little part of that organization that was doing things with private clients. I thought, that's interesting. Who are these characters? And of course, we were based around here. We were going out for drinks and meeting people. And so then family offices became a thing on my radar. Became aware of them. And so then I ended up going to Euromoney because they were launching a family office group, essentially, called something, FON. They all have these acronyms, all of them. Which I'm sure no longer exists, but it was a way of, essentially, they were trying to leverage their black book. So Euromoney is a big media conglomerate. They do big conferences. I'm sure everyone knows them. And at the time, we were trying to create an almost fintech venture between the buy side and the sell side. A platform where we could marry everyone up, like everyone is trying to do, basically. But the good thing that Euromoney had was 50 years of experience of running big conferences, so they had a pretty decent black book as it was. And I was brought in specifically to help grow the family office part of that. Although I actually ended up working a lot more with institutional investors in the end. But that was my first kind of foray into family office land, and started meeting a lot of people that I'm actually still friends with today. And then as part of that, I met the German family that then later went on to employ me.
What initially piqued your interest? So, you said you almost went from not hearing about this so-called family office world to essentially kind of nestling straight in. And obviously now a lot of people knowing that you're a very prominent figure within that space. What piqued your interest to kind of go into that family office world?
Yeah, so I mean, I was meeting a lot of investment professionals from the institutional world as well at that time. A lot of CIOs of pension funds and insurance companies. And there are some lovely people in that world, but they tend to be quite boring, for want of a better expression. Some of them are great, but some of them are quite vanilla, and they just, a lot of the institutional investors do the same sort of thing.
You have to be boring, You're a custodian of billions, if not trillions of dollars of other people's money. So you have to be pretty straight. You have to be pretty straight.
Whereas with private capital, you can do whatever you want. And so in the family office world, I was meeting these mad characters who were trying to build theme parks, live forever, put lasers on the moon, do all kinds of mad, cool, interesting stuff. And of course, the personalities involved are extremely colorful, as we all know. And so it was just a more kind of eclectic and intrinsically interesting group of people to me. And so I gravitated towards that area of finance rather than the kind of, boring end of finance.
But you were coming at it without a, I guess, kind of financial training background, an investment background.
Exactly.
It's coming at it from the other angle. And lots of people, if not most people, come in from banking into family office, at least into the investment teams, right?
Totally. Yeah, 100%. And I was definitely coming at it from these are interesting people angle rather than, oh, look at that spreadsheet. These numbers look sexy. It was not. It was very much the kind of the human relationship component that made it interesting to me. Yeah.
How did you go about getting into those family offices? As kind of Gus mentioned before, typically they look for that sort of pedigree investment background. How did you go about, I guess, getting into that space without having those years at a bank or etc.?
Well, actually, funny enough, some of my slightly madder stories from my 20s were quite a good icebreaker and made people want to hang out with me and learn more. So I never thought that would actually be a useful
So what
asset.
you're saying is, to get a job in the family office, join a tribe in Papua New Guinea.
For at least a year. Yeah.
For at least a year.
At least a year.
Yeah, that'd be
Don't
my
muck
advice.
about with the course.
No. Yeah, you've got to do it properly. And that really helped because I wasn't just sort of trying to get meetings with people and saying, hello, I went to JP Morgan and did this, which we've all heard 100 times. And hats off to those people. I couldn't do it. But I could say I lived with a cannibal tribe and survived it. So if you want to hear more, let's hang out. Let's be friends.
Do you have any missing body parts?
Well, I'll show you later.
Or maybe you won't.
Maybe I won't, yeah. Exactly.
So it got from that, the crazy venture fun stuff, and then True Ventura was one where you were in for quite a while.
5 years, yeah.
And that was quite an expansive, you were looking at lots and lots of things, different funds and lots of direct deals, right? Can you maybe talk a bit about what was going on there?
Certainly, yeah. So as I mentioned, I was like the London outpost almost for that family office. And it was very venture heavy and very seed stage venture heavy. And also increasingly, as I was there, very kind of deep tech heavy as well. So the principal had built these consumer internet businesses that had done very well, but then got very interested in things like longevity, by which I mean age-related disease prevention. We were focusing on drug discovery. Ended up anchoring a fund actually in that space that was looking at genomic instability, the senescence of cells, what else? Telomere attrition, these kind of things. And so we were looking for like-minded investors in that space. And so I was going around London meeting other family offices that had certain risk appetite and preference for venture and that kind of thing. But we were also an LP in a bunch of funds. So it was a kind of, as is often the case at a family office, a wearing multiple hats kind of role. But yeah, I was here, and so I was going to a lot of events and conferences and hanging out around here a lot, these parts of town, meeting other families, looking at their portfolio companies, interesting stuff for us to deploy into, but also saying, we're actually raising with some of our portfolio companies, we're raising with our venture fund over here. If that's interesting, let's chat. And the nice thing about that is that I was able to build this network, which is now is called FOS. It wasn't in the early days.
Family Office Social.
Exactly right. We've got about 650 people in it at the moment. And it was mega organic. I didn't set out to build this thing at all. I basically went to the pub with a couple of people and it was great. We thought we should do this again. And so we went and we were even more people. And we did it again and we were even more people. And as I said, we're now 650 people. But the founding ethos remains the same. And then off the back of that, of course, we've created a few spin-outs that do different things, deals, funds, insights, solutions, all kinds of bits and pieces. But it's essentially just a group of like-minded individuals who can compare notes on anything they like, family office related.
So we can get on to, I want to get more into FOS because that's it's growing rapidly, and you've probably added 3 more members since we've been joining. And also, of course, our partnership, FOS and AU are intimately linked. And working together and cross-fertilizing members and deals and insight and so many things. So True Ventura and now at Ness, there was a brief swerve into another area which we'll talk about. Maybe, I don't know if we're going with names here, but there's a gap there. What can we talk about that?
Yeah. Well, as everyone knows, the family office land is fraught with complex and shady characters. And it's very hard to verify who's the real deal and who isn't often. So you've got household names, everyone knows, they're fine, But often you can meet someone and they say, hello, nice to meet you. I work for a multi-billion family office. I can't tell you any more, but I'm legit, trust me. And it's annoying because that is now the case for me. I now do work for a real family office.
It's a real problem.
That I can't really say much about. But there are other individuals out there that masquerade as family offices, but who aren't. And they can do this for a variety of reasons. The most common is to pretend to be a family office when you're in fact a broker. That happens quite a bit, where you say, I represent a certain family office, but actually you're trying to flog certain deals to other family offices. What's the best way to meet other family offices? Well, pretend to be a family office. So that's kind of a classic
we
fake
have
family
those
office.
at every event we do, people trying to get in, I'm a family office, but actually they're raising for a third party.
Yeah. Classic, exactly. But then there are characters that are even stranger. And
Who are not out for financial gain.
or if they are, they're not out for it in the conventional ways. And indeed, I knew one quite well last year. And indeed this individual was outed in a Sifted article at the end of last year.
We posted it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of quite a high profile name. But yeah, extraordinary personality, and not in a good way.
Yeah. And it really shows you that even with years and years of experience, it's so difficult to navigate the space.
Yeah.
It really is. We're trying to fix it, and you're helping with the approved family office program. And, but it's non-stop. We've got events next week where we're turning people away because we can clearly see that they're not a family office, and they're very brazen about it. Just you scratch under the surface and you can see, oh wow, this is not someone we want to be associated with.
It's really hard because as I mentioned, I now work for a real family office that I can talk about in a minute. But we are very private, very discreet, and so if you ask me to say what we do, and we'll get to it, I'll say a little bit. But I can't tell you a lot about what we do. The individual that we just alluded to was actually quite the opposite. Was very open about all the stuff that he actually didn't do. It turns out, and I think sometimes that can be a red flag when someone says, "Nice to meet you. I'm worth however many billions." Most people who are worth billions are trying to hide that. So yeah, a fascinating character. But to your point, it's really difficult. If you work for an Aviva or a Legal & General or whatever, you probably do. You can go to the office and exist, and it's a real thing. Whereas I know a whole bunch of real family offices like ours that can't say much about what we do.
Definitely. I think we've touched on that before. It's that line of discretion, and there's the legitimate players that will want to be discreet, but then it also allows those who aren't legitimate to kind of fall by the wayside because they can still play their card.
You're right on the money there, Luce. And that's what we're trying to do, is be able to say to the community, okay, well, we've checked these guys out. We're not showing all their information and disclosing it, but we've gone through our processes and checked and done as much as we can. We are not the SEC. We're not the FCA. We are making sure they fit within the community, and it's hopefully someone we like, know, and trust.
Yeah.
It can happen that even with that, as we've seen, you can get a long way down the road before you realise that actually this is really, really safe, which is where community comes in, because
100%.
then you have, a walled garden and trust within that. And if the threat is being, or if the warning is there that, look, you will be exposed, then you're going to stop pretty quickly. But for too long, people have hidden behind that it's a privacy thing. It's
Totally.
crazy.
Yeah. I mean, if the person doesn't seem to have made any investments and there's no ability to do any kind of proof of wealth at any point, source of wealth checks, and no one's ever heard of this person and no one's ever done business with this person, I mean, they can still be real, unfortunately, at that stage, but I would say those are all major red flags.
But I think that's where the power of community comes in, though, because what you find is someone will mention, have you heard about X? And then there'll be other stories and whispers that come out, right? And it's also sieving out hearsay from legitimate experiences, but that's what we've also found as well, isn't it?
Everyone's got a list. Everyone has at least one person they go, okay, well.
And once that's shared within a community, everyone starts to kind of reveal their cards, and
100%.
you find out these bad players.
So with that in mind, tell us everything about this office that you can't really talk about but can. Let's talk about appetite and what they're interested in and what they want to invest in as much as you can, without going, let's not do the whole history and everything. And there is a private individual, and people certainly deserve to be private if they want to be, but it's interesting to know what you're doing day to day and how you're marshalling their wealth and investing it.
Yeah, certainly. So it's a bit of a shift of gears from me in the sense that I've been in venture land for how many years, and the family that I work for now does very little venture. The source of wealth was real estate, and that continues to be the primary focus. And real estate in the Middle East, but also in Western Europe and maybe in North America as well. It's almost all I can say at this stage, so I know it's frustrating. But we're about to make some major decisions in the next few weeks. So hopefully next time I'm on with you guys, I can tell you all about it. But it's great. It's very different. There's something quite satisfying about real estate in the sense you can touch it.
Tangible.
It's very different to a lot of the kind of speculative stuff I was looking at in venture, where you're looking for that kind of the power law dynamics of knowing that most things you invest in won't work out and hoping that one will pay for the rest and all this sort of stuff. If you buy a hotel, it's probably going to be fine. It may go up in value, may go down in value, but it's going to have some value, and you can probably get money out of it in the meantime. So it's just a bit of a mindset shift for me. But that's great. Yeah. Loving it.
And are they looking to bring you in to introduce venture and other categories in the future, or what's the play for? Why did they hire you?
Well, why not? Well, who wouldn't want me on their team?
Not to be flippant, but what's the buy?
Yeah. Well, the idea is we are going to be teaming up with a bunch of other families to do various deals, and certainly to combine forces when looking at larger ticket deals in real estate. And so, my network's pretty good, and ever expanding. And actually, FOS, which we can talk about in a minute, is a bit of a Swiss Army knife for all things family office related. So we've used FOS for the day job in a number of different ways already. But on top of that, there's actually talk of one venture opportunity that we might be pursuing right now. So obviously I'm going to get my teeth into that. And the other thing is that there's a sister family to the family that I work for. And one of my best friends works at that family. So there's something quite nice about, I've got a kind of colleague who's also helps run FOS. So he's a kind of colleague with the day job and a colleague with the community that we built as well.
I guess my question onto that, you've sort of touched on it, but how much, flexibility do you have in terms of going to a principal and saying, look, I know you're only interested in real estate or venture. How about looking at this?
That's a good question. I think we've got some pretty concrete projects that we're working on right now. So it's not that we have some sort of opportunistic mandate with a big exit and we can just sort of shop around and see what's out there. But that may happen. That may happen in the future. I think we're trying to complete 2 or 3 projects currently. And then, absolutely, we can leverage the network we've built. One of the ways that we have leveraged FOS for the day job already is that we were looking at potential real assets across various jurisdictions. And in terms of a deal sourcing method, it's great because I can just go to family and say, hey, you guys have made loads of money doing X, Y, Z, and I know you and I trust you and blah, blah, blah. We're looking at this particular area. What have you got? Have you got anything in your portfolio you're trying to sell? Are you investing in something, but there's still capacity for another family to come in? This kind of stuff. And we got a whole list of super interesting off-market deals that I was able to go to principal and say, hey, check this out. Just purely from our network in London. That's it. We didn't have to go to any brokers. We didn't go to investment banks. I just said, no, these are all guys I know, and look at these cool assets that are off limits to most investors, but we have access.
So you sat on a bunch of our panels over the past 5-10 years talking about co-investment, and that's becoming more and more prevalent. Family offices sharing knowledge, sharing expertise, and working together on things. What's your experience with that been like to date, and where do you see that going next?
Yeah, I think we're going to see more of it because why not leverage the expertise of other families if you want to have mutually beneficial outcomes. So, for instance, if our family principal decided that fintech was the next big thing in 2025, he hasn't, but let's just say he did. I would probably go to the families that I know that have been very successful in fintech, understand the space, and pick their brains. First of all, but probably look at the deals that they're investing into and ask if there's capacity and then team up with them and just rely on the fact that they've been successful in these areas and just need additional capital. So I think we're going to see more co-investments going forward. How
do these families go about doing almost DD on the families that they're potentially going to co-invest with?
Yeah, it's super difficult. It's a bit like the point we came up with earlier, which is that it's an art, not a science, right? You have to leverage the community, leverage people that you know. I'm sure you have the same thing when people trying to join FOS. It's the same point that I'm getting to. If someone is recommended by someone else, then it adds a lot of weight to their credibility. If someone cold emails me on LinkedIn and says, yeah, I'm a family office, can I be part of your gang? Maybe, but it requires more conversation. So in terms of DDing other families, yeah, it's tricky. It's not easily done. I think the best way to think about it is a lot of family offices will only co-invest with people that they've known for a long time. And so it just takes ages. You just have to develop relationships, hang out with them for ages, look at the deals they're in, get to know them on a personal level, go on their yacht, do whatever it happens to be.
Take them to the jungle.
Take them to the jungle, yeah.
Introduce them to the tribe.
There's an idea. I've never tried that. There's a few people I would
That's a real test of metal.
Yeah. I like the sound of that. But yeah, it's an art, not a science, I think, is probably the best way to think about it.
And when those co-investments are happening, are they taking the full range of forms in that you're just pointing at something and saying, oh, we're going in there together? Is it a special purpose vehicle? And then probably the most focused version is actually building a fund into which other family offices would put money into your fund and vice versa. How is that landscape evolving?
Yeah, all of those things happen. So when I was at the German family, the principal, who was a successful consumer internet entrepreneur, took the view that a certain area of biotech was the next big thing and would produce outsized returns. And so we then anchored a fund And the idea was to leverage the expertise of a bunch of PhDs that we brought on for the hard science side of things, but leverage his expertise in terms of company building and have a kind of venture creation model in this area of longevity. And then to bring in other families who understood the vision, understood that, if we can cure aging, we can make loads of money and do other things. But then say, but you're in safe hands because we're with a successful entrepreneur who's built companies in the past successfully, and we're going to just do that again, but looking at biotech. There are a whole bunch of SPV platforms and other kind of more niche vehicles that people use to team up as well. So I think, you get the whole roster.
Okay, so we've talked touched on FOS a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell me the makeup of that group. Who's in there?
Yeah.
There's as we know, full spectrums of family offices.
Yeah.
What's in there? What are the conversations that happen? Why is it of use to people to join?
Yeah, sure. So going back to the kind of origin story that I alluded to, we created it not thinking it would be a thing. It was just a bunch of us who would get a drink every now and then, pure buy-side people, no one trying to pitch anything, no service providers. And we go to the pub, have a chat, and it was great. And for quite some time, it was just that. And it grew a bit, 5, 7, 15 people, 20 people. But we never thought it would become much more than that. But it reached this kind of inflection point, probably about 50, 60 people, where we realized, we're onto something here. And it remains pure buy-side, so it's only family office people in there, to the best of our abilities, I should say. We've got 600.
There's always that last caveat. That
Yeah.
you do as much as you can.
Yeah, it's tricky. And in fact, there are nuances. I mean, it's very difficult because what happens if, say, you've got someone who's the next gen of a massive family office who's got a job at a venture fund, or these kind of things that you wear more than one hat. Well, what do you do?
We have a bunch of some of our younger members are scions of family offices.
Yeah.
They're in AU as members, but they're not listed as family office because they currently work in an asset manager, and they're learning the ropes within an asset manager in order to go back to the homestead and manage the money, which is very, very sensible way of doing things.
100%. Yeah, it's tricky. And so we just basically tell people like that, just wear your family office hat in here. Like, please.
What are the sort of roles typically, like the roles that most of these people within the FOS community have at family offices?
So it's a mega plethora of different roles. I'd say in terms of the makeup of the group in general. So if we say we've got 650 people in there, probably about a third of those people are family members and 2/3 are investment professionals, like myself. And of course there's overlap. There's some people who are investment CIO of their own family office or whatever. There's a bunch of next gens in there. There's also people who have just had a big exit and just launching their own family office. There's really all sorts in there. And attitude goes so far, So long as you mean well, we'll be quite lenient. There are other organizations that have very strict requirements. I think you guys are much stricter, which makes perfect sense, about you've got to have a certain AUM or you've got to prove X, Y, Z. We're more chilled because we're not a business. We're a community, so we can afford to be a bit more relaxed. If you've just had an exit and you're worth 100 million and you do make a couple of fund investments and that's fine, that's okay. That's good enough. And we've also thrown out people who are totally legit family office people who misbehave in other ways. We can do whatever we like with it, and we do. And because we don't monetize it, we can afford to be much more flexible, and it's, vibe will get you most of the way. I forget what the question was, but that's answered.
I like vibe will get you most of the way.
Yeah, vibe will get you most of the way.
That's great. And that's why, it's a shameless self-promotion, but this is why we've been able to partner, because we are two sides of the same coin, with you being a non-profit community-led thing. We have obviously our revenue generating arms as well. And the level of diligence we're doing is there to hopefully complement what you guys are doing. Totally. And by the by, the bit that we haven't mentioned here is that everyone who's in FOS can have or has an AU account ready and waiting for them to come on board. And we've been doing this for, probably 4 or 5 months of slowly inviting people over, and vice versa. So you host your monthly drinks around the world. We've obviously got a whole bunch of stuff. So it's a really nice symbiosis, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, totally. I see it in exactly the same way. It's a yin-yang approach.
What's the sort of demographic breakdown of the FOS in terms of where these investors are based, the families are based, and where they're investing?
Yeah, so it's London heavy because I'm here, and so is my partner Paul, who co-runs it with me. But we are truly global, I think it's fair to say. So we've done FOS drinks in Dubai, New York, Miami, Hong Kong, Switzerland. I forget where in Switzerland, maybe Zurich. And we've got members, I think, from every continent. I mean, it truly is a global network.
Antarctica?
Funny enough, I'm meeting someone this evening who is a member of FOS who's just been to Antarctica for Christmas. Yeah, she's great.
If not, that's definitely FOS AU trip there.
I like the sound of that. Yeah, I know two FOS members who've been to Antarctica. Now I mention it. Yeah,
definitely. Well,
AYU retreat.
Yeah.
And the jungle as well.
Jungle I can do. I'll be the tour.
We'll do one of those cruises around the world.
I like the sound of that.
Well, we talked about this again on panels in the past about how lots of people watching this will be wanting to pitch family offices. And in general, if you've put your hand up anywhere to say you're a family office, you're going to get inundated. And a lot of that is going to fall on deaf ears because of the volume you're working with. How should someone approach another family office in order to at least get a conversation and to have your attention about an opportunity?
Yeah, it's really difficult. Really, I mean, please.
It's a challenge for you, apart from anything else.
It is a challenge. I think, if you want to do a little experiment, go on your LinkedIn right now and change your job description to family office, and then just see how many cold pitch decks you'll receive today. It's absurd. And I think that's, it really is not the way to do it. A cold message on LinkedIn that's several paragraphs long with a pitch deck attached. I get, I don't know how many a day of them, and I just can't, I don't have the energy or capacity or will to look at these things. So don't do that. That's point number one. The best way is, of course, to have an in. If a family office that I know well says, Sam, I know you guys do X, Y, Z. There's a cool opportunity that's right up your street. Check this out. I probably will. So if you have an in to family office world through a family office, leverage that big time. Definitely do your research. I remember when I was at Truventuro and we did seed stage venture in tech and life sciences, getting messages saying, I think I've got this amazing Parisian hotel. It's perfect for Truventuro. And you just think, well, but we don't do that. You haven't even Googled what we do. That's an amazing red flag straight away. Get your name right. A lot of people message me with Dan. I think it's an autocorrect on LinkedIn, but I mean, if you say hi Dan, it's at the end.
I get Guy and Doug a lot.
There you go.
What?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, it's fine, but I have to.
You get Brian often, don't you?
Luke, no. I get Lucia, I'm not inundated with pitch decks in LinkedIn messages.
It'll come, Luke.
Yeah. So I realise I've said what not to do a bit more than what to do. If you do your research, what is that particular family office actually interested in? That's step number one. And then, do you have a warm intro that you can leverage in some way? If not, the cold email can work. I mean, as I said, when I was at Truventuro, we were doing a lot of stuff in longevity. I would occasionally receive a pitch deck that had a couple of buzzwords that actually hit the spot. I remember getting a deck that said something to telomere attrition. I thought, okay, or let's at least have a look at this. That is actually what we're focusing on. But it's difficult. It's really hard. Be nice to people as well. I mean, if someone messages me and they're sort of aggressive, then no. I mean, I'm not going to meet up with you. If you have a bit of personality, stand out in a good way, and then try to have a warm intro and research what you're doing.
This is what we're trying to do with our side, where we are trying to filter these things for family offices. So there's only a small amount coming through, and actually, if there is an introduction we think is valuable, it's only made when the family office has specifically said in advance, I'd like to see this stuff. Yeah. Because if we as an organisation or any organisation send you 100 things, you're not only going to read one or two, you're not going to read any of them, and you're basically going to block that person anyway. Totally. So hopefully that's what we're trying to do. Our platforms worth in general, us aside, don't talk about us, but platforms in general, do you use them? Is there validity there to that process, or is it the warm introduction that's always the best way?
Personally, I've always relied on the warm introduction, and I do so more and more now that my network is bigger and better as well. But I think there's a place for both. And in fact, I think the warm introductions via a platform or network, an official network, could be great. If you're interacting with people that you know, but it's just on a more formal platform than, let's say, a WhatsApp group, I think that could work nicely. Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to do that with some trust involved.
Yeah, and integrity, right? If with these relationships you build, if you're putting deal flow in front of family offices, that there's no relevance, that relationship over time is just severed, right?
100%.
So we kind of touched on this, but in regards to deal flow, you, for yourself, it sounds like you've made a lot of connections and introductions through your network. What have you seen in the space in terms of family offices, in terms of getting access to these special projects or funds, and how do you or other family offices go about accessing deal flow if they're not looking at their LinkedIn?
It's very difficult. Yeah, it's very.
Yeah, are you sitting there and it's coming to you, or that active search? Are you asking about the active search?
Yeah.
I don't know how families do it. I don't know, because I know how I do it, but I don't know how other families go about this. I mean, if you're looking to allocate to a certain area, let's say life sciences, traditionally you'd probably go to a fund, understanding that their expertise and deal flow would be better than yours might be. But as we mentioned with co-investments being kind of all the rage these days, I think leveraging other relationships with family offices who are known experts in certain fields might be the way to go. And then you save on the management fees as well. I don't know if that answers your question at all, does it?
No, it does. It does. It kind of summarises everything that we've discussed.
As with everything in this space, there are, just it depends.
Lyrical, yeah.
It depends. It's got to be open up to these things. Okay, so we're going to have you back over and over again. Obviously, you speak at our events the whole time, and we're closely connected. But we're right at the beginning of 2025, with a new president in the US. Still plenty of instability around the world, but lots of opportunity. What does the year look like for you? What are you excited about? Where are you going to be in the world? On a plane, a bunch again, I'd say.
In the jungle?
Probably not the jungle, but never say never. Definitely on a plane. We'll be in the US quite a bit, be in the Middle East quite a bit. And hopefully I'll be hanging out with you guys quite a bit. That'd be fun.
Well, we've got 3 more family office summits coming this year in Switzerland, New York, and London, all on the website and stuff. Great. And we'll pin you to every one of those if we can do.
With pleasure. Yeah.
And lots and lots of. We've got a monthly tokenization dinner that we're doing at the moment, which is really interesting. That's real world asset stuff as well. So some exciting stuff there. And there's lots to be done. So thank you so much for coming in and sharing your brain with us. It's been a slice.
It has. Thanks, guys.
Can't wait for next time. Thanks,
Likewise.
Sam.
So, Mr. Sam Copley didn't disappoint, did he?
Never does. Super interesting guy. We touched on the family office social, which he has, and it's a lot of overlap with AYU and that ongoing partnership.
Yeah.
And it's just great to have someone who's a family office, works in a family office, but also has a community of other family offices. Yeah. It's kind of like a well of knowledge for sure.
Well, we'll be doing loads more with him this year. He often speaks at AU events. He's a frequent guest, and I think he's going to come on a ski trip and various things around the world this year. Fantastic conversation with Sam. Luce, what's going on right now?
So we just came back from Miami. It was an amazing trip, made lots of different connections, added super great value to our community.
I think I loved it.
It always is. The Family Office Summit was a huge success. Got some great meetings for our GPs. The AU yacht was always incredible. What was your highlight?
It's hard between those two things because it's the first time we've done the summit in Miami. So it was great to kind of put the flag down there, but this is our 4th year doing the yacht, and that works really, really nicely. It's just such a nice place, very conducive place to get to know people without it being quick pitch and everything like that.
It is. So it's definitely one of the highlights.
Yeah, I love that bit. But the Family Office Summit now is cementing itself in our calendar, hopefully in other people's as well. So we're rolling on to another one of those in New York. We're looking at Switzerland, and then London will be in October again. And then we've got our normal calendar. So you're back to Miami fairly soon.
I'm back to Miami. It's the 3rd month in the row.
Yeah.
And then off to New York as well to go and host some events out there, hang out with some members.
And then I think you're straight back then to Dubai, Miami, and Zurich, plus the ski trip as well.
Yes, so guys, it's a hard life.
I'm going to call you Air Miles from now on.
I'll take that.
I've also just had a baby, so maybe not traveling for a little bit.
Okay, it doesn't show.
Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. But yeah, thanks for being with me again this week, and thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.